well enough? Well, good. Well, what we're going to talk about today, this evening, is evacuation. Again, this is an emergency preparedness 101 class. I had somebody come up the other day and ask me a question. She said, did you cover one of those? I said, well, that would be emergency preparedness 360. This is basics. We're trying to keep it basic. This is not intended to be a be-all and end-all of every aspect of what we're going to discuss. Just kind of covering the highlights of what you might want to think about. And it's like the other topics I've covered about. I left a lot of it up to your imagination. It would be very presumptuous of me to suggest that I know everything about what you need to be prepared. My situation is different from your situation, is different from everybody else's situation. So these are just meant as ideas to spur your intellect, to spur your creative juices, so that you can think about how best to be prepared. So tonight we're going to talk about evacuation, or where you're going to go when you have to get out of Dodge. A few things. Why might you need to evacuate? I live in my house. I've lived in my house for 25 years. I don't plan on going anywhere. Why? What would make you leave? Do you need a plan? If so, why do you need a plan? Who do you have to share this plan with? Do you take this plan, write it down, stick it under your mattress, and keep it for yourself forever and ever and ever? Or should you, someone's going, yes, that's what you should do. Don't share it with anybody. Well, I will hopefully proffer some ideas why it might be a good idea to share that with some people. If you have to evacuate, where are you going to go? Sometimes that's not even a thought we'd actually thought of before. Well, if I have to leave, I'm leaving. Where are you going to go? And then how are you going to get there? That also might be a consideration. And we'll kind of talk about why that. I may hopefully bring up some ideas that you hadn't thought of before. And then kind of kicking back to what I talked about last week, which was 72-hour kits, is what are you going to need when you get there? If your plan is to leave here and go live like a wild man in Borneo up in the hills, then having a big survival knife and a big coat might be a good thing. But if your plan is to go to Aunt Edna's house, you probably might want an extra pair of socks rather than a big survival knife. Although, you never know wrong having knives. One of my mottos in life is you can never have too many knives or flashlights. So why might you need to evacuate? There are lots of reasons that have nothing to do with complete disasters. Most of them are disasters, but I'll give you a for instance. When I lived in San Antonio, there was a railroad cars, railroad tracks going everywhere, and I literally was there about a couple of weeks, and this train became derailed, and it spread chlorine everywhere. These two big tanker trucks were filled with chlorine, or some chlorine-like material, I'm not exactly sure what it was, and they had to evacuate hundreds of blocks in every direction because of this chlorine gas spill. Some of the people who lived closest to the railroad tracks were not able to go home for almost a week and a half. I mean, so it doesn't have to be a huge disaster. It could be a disaster in your backyard, and that might be able to force you out. So what are the kind of things? Fires. Think about the Anaheim fires that we had here, that swept through the apartment complexes and those kind of things. We talk about the fires that we have here in California in the hills all the time. But the ones that they had in San Diego, those were a lot of residential neighborhoods, and it just swept through that. If we were to suddenly have a fire that was close enough here with the Santa Ana winds sweeping through our neighborhoods, that might be a real problem. Why you'd have to leave. Flooding is another one. And I like this picture because it's fire and floods. This is from the picture of the Northridge earthquakes. I like using this picture because this is the picture that freaked my wife out. More than anything else, that image of a gas main and water and fire at the same time, she said that just unnerved her. So I use it all the time, and she's not even here for her to unnerve her, so that's not even fair. What kind of flooding? Well, we have, we live in a desert. We get torrential rains here. Earthquakes. Did you hear, by the way, that the USGS just made their first earthquake prediction? Did you hear about that? First time that they've ever done that. They predicted that in the next 30 years, we're going to have an earthquake in California, 6.5. I could have got it in Vegas and got better odds on that. But there they go. They actually predicted that we're going to have an earthquake in California greater than 6.5. Color me shocked. Now, if they just said, in Chicago, South Chicago, that would have really got me and shocked all the people there. Most of those people in that area, by the way, who are not used to earthquakes, I'm probably sure came unglued when the earth moved under their feet. They are not used to that whatsoever, you know. So I'm sure they came up with it. But we live in an earthquake country, so an earthquake could mean some reason why we have to move. Chemical spill, like I talked about the train wreck. A terrorist attack. We live in days where terrorism and terrorist attacks are prevalent and are something our government is worried about. Not that I'm probably a little more afraid of earthquakes than I am of a terrorist attack. Although when we spoke to went to a seminar with the Department of Homeland Security guy, chief of California, he was the California division guy, I don't know what his title was. He said that at 9/11, one of the plans was to attack Los Angeles as well. Disneyland being one of them. They're going to fly a plane into Disneyland, fly a plane into downtown, fly a plane into the Vincent Thomas Bridge, and hopefully taking out some, most or all of the Long Beach Harbor. And there's a couple other points too. And I did not realize that. It kind of put a chill down my spine. What else? A gas line, pipeline breakage. Do we have gas lines that run through our area here? Natural gas and otherwise? Yeah, you see those little orange, white poles with the orange signs as you drive down the road? Drive down the road, look, you'll see a big sign that says gas line. So why do you need a plan? Why do you have to actually have a plan? I know what I'm going to do. I've thought this through. Why do I actually have to have a, quote, plan, end quote? Because most evacuations come with little or no notice. You're not going to have a weeks long to go, okay, this is the things I'm going to get together, this is what I'm going to do. You may have as little as 5 minutes. They literally may come into your neighborhood and say, it's a forced evacuation. And they're not kidding. They come, and the policemen will go through your house, and they will take you, and they will take you out. Pajamas and all, if you're ready to go or not. And they may give you some warning, but they come and they may ask you to leave, and you may not get back. And you may not get back for a long period of time. San Diego fires are an example of that. I heard tell that there were people who had less than 5 minutes. The police came down the street and said that you had 3 minutes to leave. And luckily some people had already gathered their stuff together. But wouldn't you rather have a plan in place and know what to do and have it in place so that you didn't have to think about, okay, what do I need to take down? What's important? What's the priority? If you've already thought that out in advance, you're that much more ahead.